In my review of the previous episode, I mentioned this idea of looking away from the screen for a few minutes and examining the world around you. As if that episode couldn't remind us enough of how screen-invested our culture has become, the second episode invites us into a world that forces the people to see the screen at all times. To me, this episode does not contain anything reflective like the previous episode, but examines the potentials of such a society should it ever exist. The moment Bing wakes up, he is greeted by his room dominated by lit surfaces that surround him. This story deals with politics, technology, the media. Wait, that kind of sounds like a similar list of subject matters covered in the first episode. Except of course the story is almost entirely different. For one thing, the main character is not the leader of a nation. In fact, not a single leader or power structure is presented in this entire episode. The episode covers angles not previously explored with regards to these subject matters, and does so with every new episode, which is absolutely incredible. Technology in this episode is once again used as a tool for distraction from the real issues of the world, but this time is enforced as part of the character's lifestyles, exercise, income, and survival. The show reveals to us the cyclists live a life of cycling by day so you can afford food to eat and toothpaste to brush your teeth with. There are several other uses for money, but the main focus of the expenditure of credits is on their unavoidable TV screens. For example, it costs more to skip an advert on these screens than it does to buy some food from a vending machine. It costs a large fortune just to try out something different from everyday life as a peddler, but at the same time it's difficult to determine the value of credits in this episode because of the lack of geographical information we are given with regards to the areas of the complex we see. It's difficult to tell where we are exactly due to there being no windows, except for this one here where we see whole stories worth of other people just pedaling along like all these others do. This means that there must be a lot of people living around here, and that life is pretty simple if you want it to be. 15 million credits can't be that hard to obtain considering the large amount of people who are able to get into that waiting room before the talent show, but then again we don't know how long it took for these people to get their chance to impress the judges. We don't know how many people there are inside this complex either, and there's no guarantee they'll succeed and escape. This is fine by me because it forces the viewer to imagine how large this technological prison is and how many other ordinary people are potentially trapped inside. This building could certainly be compared to that of a prison, but there is little to no incentive for the inmates to grow violent as they haven't done anything wrong as far as I'm aware. This entrapment not only leads to disconnection with reality, but also attempts to suppress people's creativity. It is instead expressed through customizable avatar characters that are supposedly representing the peddler's personality. We see the original paper origami Abby makes being thrown away, yet the movement of her avatar, the dress style, and even the penguins on her screen indicate her creativity instead. There is also Bing's creativity, which is always inspired by his desire for freedom. His cycling animation is of a countryside simulator, similar to that of screens we see on long flight aeroplanes, where you could watch TV and movies for the duration of the flight, but the map of the flight path is also an option. In reality, we see a very different picture where peddlers are placed in grey exercise outfits and the cleaners are dressed in bright yellow cleaning clothes. The cleaning clothes could easily be mistaken for a nurse's outfit. They are obviously miscoloured, but the outfit demonstrates that perhaps these cleaners are also there to help out the peddlers if they are in need of medication or having some kind of medical emergency. There are no robots or machines that could fill that role, so I am left to assume their job extends beyond just cleaning. I think it's really great that this show recognises the characters' disconnection not only from reality but from each other too. We don't know how long these people have been in this complex of cyclists and cleaners, but it's very clear that none of them really know each other or care for each other in any way. The screens provide plenty of distractions to prevent people from communicating. When we see the survey of who preferred apples or bananas, the liking of videos that comes up as an inconvenient message for everyone else, and when the ginger guy on the bike attempts to create conversation with one of the other cyclists regarding his new haircut. Most of these attempts at socializing from the characters are just fuel for these people's narcissistic egos, which is not only one of the driving forces of modern social media, but also prevents people from caring or bothering to socialize because they're too focused on on themselves. The sound editing in the first parts of the episode are excellent at demonstrating this too. For example, it can be heard as something very muffled and diluted at times, reflecting the lack of richness within their culture and their personalities, which is also shown by their grey clothes they wear. The music becomes more complex and vibrant when Bing donates his 15 million credits, showing some compassion for a girl he sees true talent in and allowing her to show off her creativity to the world. One of the big things this episode commentates on is politics, and even though there's no particular entity to blame for the rather glum situation our characters find themselves in, there's plenty to discuss and dissect from the episode. What we are dealing with essentially is the ultimate environmentally friendly capitalism. If you contribute enough towards those you have the opportunity to become famous and escape the mundane life you live. This applies to all except the yellow cleaners, who are essentially treated as an underclass to serve those who are fit enough to cycle. Now, I certainly don't think the show is advocating for the promotion of fat shaming, despite it very much looks like it, purely because it always seems like there's something above the cyclists too. We have a hierarchy in place, but it is uncertain who is at the top and what the cyclists' efforts are ultimately contributing towards. When we think of work in a 21st century sense, we are essentially contributing towards the assistance and well-being of society and the community. Obviously, not all jobs fit that description, but it's pretty much God's law in capitalistic environments that those who work hard have the choice to spend their earnings in whichever way they see fit. Of course, that money also has to contribute towards the survival of the individual, such as food, rent, bills, medication, and so on. This is a very similar situation to what is going on here, but most purposes of employment are known, whereas these cyclists are presumably just contributing towards their own survival. The lack of understanding what is at the top of the hierarchy establishes a truer form of capitalism where there is no government control that we are made aware of. As far as the peddlers are aware, they are just working for themselves. The people at the top of the hierarchy, those that control the media we see on the screens, are pushing the agenda of difference between those that peddle and those that clean. We see not only difference in uniform being used, but it's shown through the violent video game that Bing and Dustin play of killing fat yellow people, and through the pornographic scenes that keep popping up. The colours of the pornographic content are very purple, the opposite colour of the spectrum to yellow. This difference in colour causes Dustin to flip out when one of them is seen in the reflection of his screen, where the degrading attitude is seen in its purest. The only thing that separates the people in yellow from the people in grey is what they do and their size. They're still regular people who could just as easily lose that weight by pedaling along with the others, but are denied the opportunity. The powers that be don't like the idea of the cleaners going fit because the stability of the system requires the human labour to clean up. Not only is an underclass required to keep everything running, but also to encourage the cyclists not to be fat and lazy while segregating them from the cleaners at the same time. This conflict that goes on between the two groups transforms a business technique into a political one by keeping everything unchanging and yet forcing the masses to continue contributing towards themselves and nothing else. The talent show section could have been made more interesting had we seen the screens and technology directing the performers to the stage. This would have established that almost everything within this isolated complex is technologically operated, a completely integrated computer system set up to support human life. Perhaps this suggestion is a bit too science fiction for what the show wanted to explore, despite the screen that the contestants have to speak into very much looks like HAL from 2001, but would have been an interesting concept nonetheless. When we get to the stage, I found it hilarious and brilliant that there is a drink made so that humans don't have a meltdown on stage. This is probably what it would say on the tin, had it not been for the name of the drink, Compliance, being a mix of compliance and cup. Obvious as that may be, it's very cleverly named, seeing as we presume this society to be dumbed down in order to not understand what compliance is, even though they do it every single day. Not only that, but the three judges get given that little bit more power over those that are coming out onto the stage because they have possession of a substance that prevents the contestants from going full anarchy on them like Bing does later. There's also a feminist angle to this program that certainly needs addressing. For starters, the judges toss the idea of her singing aside very quickly in favour of seeing her body and using her for the porn channel. It's very interesting that the female judge acts as robotic as the others, only she sheds a tear as an indication that she herself has failed as a person of the same gender as her. It's not unlikely she had to go through a similar experience in order to get to where she is now. This fear that's displayed indicates to me that the judges are not on top of the hierarchy but are certainly there to support its existence. The show addresses the idea that reality TV and talent shows prefer attractive people and are more likely to win. That's just simple enough for a monkey to analyze. What the show does to take it further, however, is this convergence of media we see where porn meets talent and are fused together in a big advertising frenzy. The first example is the transformation of singer to porn actress as soon as the advert comes out of Abby after the first talent show. The advertisement, of course, does not remind the people of the sexual harassment she faced on stage that night because that's what the media's there for, keeping the power structures in place by eliminating any chance of criticism or foul play within their footage, preventing an uprising. Secondly, this entertainment fusion is seen when Bing dances to the sound of the porno music. I'm not sure if this was intentional, but knowing the genius of this show, it probably was. By using this music, Bing forces the judges to confront what they have done to these potentially talented women that are just used as sex objects for viewers to enjoy whilst cycling. Despite Bing no longer being a slave to the bike machine, nothing relating to the system itself has actually changed by the end of the episode. The narcissism, harassment, and ridicule still continues as always. He gets roped into doing exactly what the judges want by making a compromise, now becoming their slave. The backdrop of his live stream is black, a choice probably made by the judges to make the cyclists still believe he's on their level, but of course he's not. That choice certainly had to be made, seeing as the rest of his room is completely white, signifying cleanliness and purity, something only found outside of the system. He is restricted to 1 hour screen time, and then what does he do? Well, he can certainly look outside his window and wonder whether or not he saved Abby, but the ending is left very open-ended, which is brilliant. The penguin on the side of his desk serves as a reminder that despite the creativity both Abby and himself share, they are both still trapped by their newly found celebrity status. Do you think he's looking out at the real world, or do you think it's just a simulation? Comment below where we will continue the discussion. Thanks for watching.